Awesome. So we're live today. We got Chris Ogilvy from Xolar Inc. If you're in the solar world, you've heard of Xolar. They're probably one of the biggest, maybe fastest growing solar companies in Canada right now. I know they've been in business roughly 4 years, maybe going on five. Me and Chris have known each other for maybe a year and a half. Welcome, Chris. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely, man. Hey, so I know a little bit about your backstory in solar. I know you started Zolar in 2021, but you started in the solar industry in 2017, I believe, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Awesome. So what was your first venture, or why did you decide to start in the solar industry?
Well, at the time, I had been, starting my career off as a door-to-door salesman,
Okay.
working more in the HVAC industry. So that's kind of like where I got started in my career after, graduating university. Um, so I was working for this HVAC company, and then, I was maybe 1 or 2 years into that, and then one of the guys that I used to work with, his name is Alex Warlow. He's a legend himself. But he hit me up randomly one day and was like, "Hey, I'm working at this solar company now. Solar is really good. It's got a bright future. You should strongly consider it." And it made a lot of sense. So I actually ended up getting into solar, working for a company called Solar Brokers Canada. That was pretty big for a while here in Ontario. I think they even tried to get into the USA market for a while. I don't know what happened with that. But yeah, so I started working for that company. At the ground level, I was working as a cold caller basically in the telemarketing room. It was a full on boiler room situation. It was an office building down on King Street in downtown Toronto, and it was funny because they had a project management company as well that was kind of like a sister company, and the building was split into like upstairs and downstairs. And the upstairs section where all the project managers worked was this really nice office, wood floors, nice fancy computers for everybody, a lot of workspace. But then the downstairs was just like this dingy, like carpeted floor. It was like there was like dust in the air, where they kept all the salespeople. So that's where I got started in solar.
Okay, so you really started from the ground up. I didn't know you were doing door to door. Well, you might have mentioned it actually. Now it sounds familiar, but door to door
Yeah,
is that you're putting in reps, and that's a pretty brutal way to start in the sales for sure.
yeah,
And then
yeah.
you go to cold calling, and then so you started. So once you're done at like, when did you finish Solar Brokers and decide to start up your own thing?
Yeah, so they had a partnership with Lowe's, and eventually they just scrapped the whole cold calling department, and they positioned everybody in different Lowe's stores. So I was doing that for a while, and then basically, there was supposed to be a 30% rebate in Ontario coming out back then. I think that was in 2017. The government was supposed to be coming out with a rebate. And then what happened was Solar Brokers, the company I worked for, they were like selling based off of like they were guaranteeing this rebate to people. And then what happened is when the conservative government got elected, they scrapped this rebate and all those contracts went bad. So this whole company basically went out of business like overnight because apparently like all their investors pulled out and everything, and they had no money to fulfill the projects. So, and I don't think they were the only one that happened to. So basically, there is like, as far as I understand, there's a pretty big vacuum in the solar industry here in Ontario, at least for a while there. And so I got started as an entrepreneur in solar, working with my old manager who used to work there. His name was Bilal. Um, so he invited me to start a company with him. It's called Solar X now. Um,
Heard about it.
and so that's where I got started, starting my own business as a co-founder with him back in 2018. So soon after all that happened with Solar Brokers. Um, of course, me and him don't really see eye to eye on too many things, so ended up splitting up, and then I started Zolar in 2021.
Nice. And I know you kind of obviously bootstrapped it with like a really small team. I've met like most of your team. I know some of them have been around from the start. What was it like starting with like I don't know how many, couple people, three, four people you started with?
Yeah, well, so originally it was just me and one of my co-founders named Jack. Originally we were marketing on Kijiji. We had a very shoestring budget.
Holy, yeah.
So, Kijiji actually has some good marketing rates. If you're a small business looking to sell some stuff, it's like
That's how I
pennies.
started too, actually, in my electrical contracting business.
Right, yeah, it's
Yeah,
pennies to
Kijiji
market there
Marketplace.
compared to anything else.
Yeah.
So if any entrepreneurs, I recommend it for sure. But so I was marketing on Kijiji selling solar panels one by one out of a shipping container.
Oh,
So I'd load up the shipping container on solar panels and then just sell them. It was across the street from my house. So people would message me, "Hey, I want to buy some solar panels." And I'd go meet them across the street and sell to them. But then eventually we worked that up into an actual marketing budget. We started advertising more, and then it was just me and Jack selling basically.
so that was just like you're selling the equipment, you're not doing any installs, nothing.
Yeah, at the beginning, yeah.
Okay, interesting.
And then we got more into, so as we kind of developed, we built up a little bit of money. We started spending some money on like Facebook marketing and Google and stuff. And then started getting more into selling whole home systems. Actually for a while we were marketing like van renovations to like retrofit your vehicle with solar because my brother-in-law actually did that with his work van and it works pretty well. And there's definitely an opportunity there, but it's just difficult with managing. Like they have to bring the vehicle in. So
Mhm.
like for us for guys starting out with not too much money, I didn't have the space for all these vehicles. So it made a lot more sense for us to go just to people's houses and install it on their house, right? But if you had the space, then I think the vehicle market is actually pretty lucrative too.
RVs and stuff.
Yeah,
I've had a
exactly.
few people reach out, never really follow through. So you guys went from selling in C cans, selling whole home. When did you start, doing the project management, doing the installs, really managing like the whole project like you guys do now?
Well, right from the beginning, like right as soon as we started selling whole home systems, I knew from the beginning that we were going to be managing the project the whole way because I had already done it at Solar X.
Hmm.
So at Solar X, I was mostly just the sales guy, but I had been constantly, going back and forth with the project managers and learning the process and what needs to be done. So my whole solar journey has been a journey of education. I feel like I'm an electrician now, basically.
I
Um,
disagree.
for sure. Well,
I know what you mean. There's definitely a lot to learn. Like even me
yeah.
coming from an electrical background, dude, it took me 12 months of like a lot of time spent on Reddit to figure out what the heck I'm doing.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of self-education involved. But because I had already been around it so much, like I already kind of knew what was involved. Like you got to do the hydro application,
Yeah.
get the permits and all this stuff. So I knew right from the beginning we were going to manage the whole project cycle. And so that's where I actually brought on my third and last co-founder, Crisardo, who manages all of the project management now.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we
I
brought
met
him,
Zardo. He's awesome. Very
yeah.
likable guy.
So at first it was just me and Jack, and then once we got into selling the whole home systems, a few months later we brought Chris on, and it's been started from just the three of us basically.
Yeah. Awesome. So how did you guys find your first like install crew? And was it just locally like in the Toronto area?
Oh man, we owe everything to him. His name's Gopal. He's got a company up in Newmarket called Herc de Soleil. He's got his own projects that he works on these days, but early on he really helped us out. He was one of the old installers that Solar X was using that I knew. So we basically contacted him and we're desperate. We're like, hey Gopal, like we need an installer. We don't have one. You have to help us out install these projects. There's definitely some riding by the seat of our pants at the beginning there.
Yeah, I think. Well, that's entrepreneurship, right?
Yeah, we had to sell first and then worry about the who's going to install it afterwards.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's okay too. It's better than finding the whole team and then not having any sales.
Well, yeah, other companies, Acon Green Energy Solutions apparently just went out of business and they did it the other way around where they hired this whole big team. They bought a whole
Uh,
HVAC. They bought an HVAC company, converted it to do solar as well, hired a big team, and who knows what happened, but I guess a year later now they're no longer in business. So
Interesting.
I think selling first and then figuring out the logistics later is the right way to do it as long as you actually pull through and get everyone's systems installed.
I think like that's a common theme I hear even with like friends of mine that have larger construction companies, and they're like, just get the contract first and worry about fulfilling it after. There's
Yeah,
no point of trying to do all the back end work and you don't even
right.
have the contract yet,
Well, because
right?
once you have a contract and you have the money in the bank, then you can pay people to do it. And once you like,
Mhm.
once you have money, like people will do the work for you, basically.
Yeah,
But if you
usually
don't
how
have,
that goes. Yeah.
yeah, but if you don't have money, then like you're screwed.
So you guys started just installing in Toronto area?
We started off in Ontario. I don't think we limited it to just Toronto, though.
Okay, well, so
Yeah.
Ontario area, because now you guys are in 10, 11 provinces.
Yeah, I opened it up early, like around this time last year. We were in Ontario first, and that was 2021, and then I think like around mid 2022 we branched into New Brunswick as well because they have a provincial rebate there.
Uh-huh.
So New Brunswick's been a good market, and then so we went on with just the two provinces for about 2 years, and then this time last year we opened it up to basically be in almost every province other than Quebec. We don't service Labrador just because it's like so remote, and there's not it's probably compared to how much demand there is, it's more difficult to find installers. Whenever I'm looking at like a location to service, I'm like, hey, what's the ratio of how many projects we're going to get there versus how many installers are available, the difficulty of finding installers.
That's actually something I'm curious about because obviously you have a knack for finding installers. Like, what's the process? Because like, so full transparency, we do some of your installs in the Ottawa region. I think
Yeah.
you found us on Instagram. I think
Facebook.
Facebook. Okay.
Yeah, you were in the Facebook group
Oh, okay.
for
Is that
solar
how?
installers.
Okay, interesting. So is that like how do you find most installers? Is it through like Facebook groups,
Yeah,
social media?
different methods. Just keep your eye out for good people, right? And sometimes you think someone's good and they turn out not to be. But a lot of trial and error to find out.
Yeah,
The thing is, solar is such a it's such a like, at least in my eyes, it's still a very early days market.
I agree.
Like there's not a lot of people that actually are qualified solar installers. So a lot of it is basically taking an electrical contractor who wants to get into green energy and then basically converting them into becoming a solar.
Yeah, it's weird that they don't like in Ontario, that's my experience, but they don't have a certification for solar installers that's mandatory. ESA kind of the rooftop stuff, like the Electrical Safety Authority, which is the inspection authority, they just let laborers install on the roof, which in my electrician brain, I think there should be some sort of license because you're still dealing with,
Right.
you know, 500-600 volts DC, making
Mhm.
crimps, making connections. I think there should be some sort of licensing, and it's a bit of weird like gray market right now where anybody can install it. And in your
Yeah.
case, how do you know who's certified, right? And I think going the electrician route makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Well, it's a tricky question because there's definitely there's some problems on either extreme. We've definitely worked with installers in the past who are not qualified, and what they would do is like they would partner up with an electrical contracting business, and that's usually how they get it done. But where you get into the problem area, which we don't want to work with any companies like this, is where they'll basically do all the install themselves and then just like basically borrow someone's license who
Yeah,
never
that's what
actually
you're gonna say.
touched anything on the job site, right? And
Yep.
there are companies that do operate in this way. We don't typically work with them. But then on the other end, for example, in New Brunswick, I actually think it's a little bit too strict because they put out a bulletin saying that anyone on the roof has to either be an electrician or an apprentice, which to me is a little too strict because, electricians aren't cheap. So that kind of just increases the cost for the
Yeah.
end user to pay for, all those electricians up on the roof doing the install. I think there's a happy medium where as long as there is an electrician on site for the install, maybe the guys on the roof could have some special training or certificate like you were mentioning, but not necessarily fully fledged electricians themselves, right? Because at the end of the day, there is a very large labor component to the job
Yeah.
that, to be quite frank with you, my experience is that most electricians don't want to be doing that work. They would rather hire a laborer to help them out, doing this stuff up on the roof, slaving
Yep.
away in the heat, while they kind of just like oversee things, tell people where to pull the wire, this type of thing.
I agree with that because there's a lot of like structural work,
Yeah.
right? Like you're putting
Yeah.
anchors down, you're putting rails in. Like, yeah, there is some like high voltage connections to be made at some point. Usually, what I do is like exactly what you say. I'll kind of oversee it. I'm not putting
Right.
in every screw anymore. Like the first year,
Yeah.
I'll kind of oversee it. I'll come make the final connections, make sure everything's good. But yeah, you don't want to be slaving away in the heat on a roof for sure.
Yeah. So those are the two kind of extremes of the spectrum, and I definitely think the right way to do it is some happy medium.
I think, well, so like I got my CSA certification when I first wanted to do solar because I'm like, hey, I have no idea what I'm doing. So
Right.
I'll go do the training. I'll go do the education. I forget what it was, 6 week course or whatever it may
Right.
be.
Right.
But it still gave me a good understanding. And there was an in-person portion to it to like, hey,
Right.
this is how an anchor goes in. This is how you hit a truss. This is how you make sure your rails are level. Like a little bit
Right.
of that because
Yeah.
as an electrician, I've never done that. For sure, I've done some structural stuff, but not on a roof like that. So yeah, I agree with you there. I think there should be some sort of certification of some sort, but maybe not a 5 year electrician diploma because you're going to pay $125 an hour.
Exactly. And it's funny because I was on the phone with a guy, his name's Michael, and I'm losing his position, but he works for the New Brunswick government. He works for the ESA equivalent in New Brunswick. And he was saying that he's on the board of some entity, I forget what it was, but essentially they have these like college programs for kids to that are for solar energy. Like if you go to this course and you graduate, you'll be qualified to work as a solar installer, is basically what these courses are. But I was pointing out to him the conflict of, you have these universities or colleges that are training all these kids for this like solar installer certificate, promising they're going to get jobs, but in the province that they live in, they won't even be qualified to work on a solar install because they're not an electrician. So they'll have to go through this program, graduate, realize it doesn't qualify them for the job that they studied for, and then they'll have to go and apprentice to become an electrician. So it's definitely, I would say, too strict over there. And then in Ontario, I don't want to say it's not strict enough. I think it's strict enough, but I think that because it's one of the older markets, there are some clever people who have kind of figured out these like loopholes and some maybe shady actors who are breaking the rules. So I don't even think it's the rules themselves. I think it's that these people are breaking the rules.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of solar guys who touch shit that they shouldn't touch. They're like, "Well,
Yeah,
I do wires on the roof. I can do this." I'm like, "Hey, dude, don't tell me because you definitely shouldn't be touching that. That's way past where you should be touching." But
right.
I'm not gonna rat anybody out, but it's definitely yeah, they go past what their certification is, unfortunately.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess for them, it's they'll make more profit if they cut out the electrician and they do the work themselves. But
Right.
yeah, it's pretty shady. I know in the States that's like a massive problem. Like I'm not sure if you've seen the
Yeah.
forums. So, it's like, oh, just another solar guy,
Oh,
electrical
yeah.
panel,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
whatever,
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
like a mess, right?
Solar electrician is what they call them.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, they're a
That's right.
solar electrician.
Nice. So yeah,
And
you guys have spread like pretty much
hold on,
Canada wide.
before you move on from that, I do want to say that even though what they're doing is wrong, there's a reason for it, and the reason for it is back to what I said, is that it's an early days industry and there's not enough labor for it. Like quite frankly, like we're in a position now where our company's growing and
Uh-huh.
we don't have enough installers, and it's like fighting tooth and nail to find qualified electricians and installers that will actually do a good job that first of all will even do solar because of how demanding of a job it is,
I agree.
but second of all, like finding enough of them to cover the broad area, right? So
Yeah,
that's why the opportunity arises for these solar electricians.
that's true. Yeah. Well, I did see that like recently you've been partnering more with electrical contractors and flipping them to do the solar aspect,
Yeah,
and maybe get the apprentices on the roof or whatnot. And that's probably easier to find because,
right,
yeah, I don't know, like solar installers, like I could just imagine being in your position, like, okay, we're expanding to Manitoba,
right.
solar installer near
Near
me,
me.
and try to find someone who's like legit, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, so I think flipping the electrical contractors makes sense, and there's a few guys around here as well that, they're getting into it now, so now they're asking me questions like, "Hey, how do you do this?" And
Right,
I did the flip, like, last year was my first, like, full year where we did only solar, and
right,
I was up on the roof, and, yeah,
right.
it's a ton of work, and it's really hot up there, and it's really hard, right? So,
Well, the
I
other
could
thing
see.
too is like we have so many jobs lined up that it's like if somebody wants to do it, there's just infinite work for you, you know? Like there's no shortage of projects to be installed.
Yeah, it's super easy, like, I know a lot of contractors sometimes are opposed to being a subcontractor, right? It's like, well, I'm not making as much money as you guys or however, but I'm like, dude, all you have to do is show up and just do the work. That's
Right.
it.
Right.
Everything's there. It's super easy. You know as well as I do, like solar, most of it is the project management. Like the
Right.
install itself
Yeah.
takes a couple days. The permitting, the applications, the rebates, the material sourcing,
Yeah.
getting the cash flow in, that's like the biggest part of the project. That's the most difficult one. And yeah, I think if you can convince electrical contractors to show up, do the work, and still be profitable for their day, I think that's a winning
Yeah.
deal, right?
Yeah. I mean, solar is not easy. I feel like if I knew now, sorry, if I knew back then what I know now, I maybe wouldn't have got into solar at the beginning to begin with, you know?
I think that's business in general. I
It's
feel that way.
yeah, yeah, it's
Yeah.
just it's there's so many moving pieces like what you said with the project management. And you'll have sales guys who are they're like, I could just go sell this myself and partner with an installer and I'll make more money. And
Mm-hmm.
then you have installers who do the same thing and they're like, well, I don't need you. I can just go sell my own projects and make more money. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like, well, who does everyone think I am here, Mr. Moneybags? Like,
Yeah.
there's a lot of work here to be done. There's employees to be paid. Like these projects, like it might seem like we snap our fingers and get a project ready to be installed, but it's not quite that simple, you know? There's like so many pieces of the puzzle that go into every single project that it's nuts. From sourcing the lead to teaching, just getting a sales agent to the point where they are actually able to sell solar I've learned is a difficult thing
Dude.
because most of them fail miserably.
Yeah. I tried last year to hire two guys that were, seasoned salesmen, let's say. And yeah, it was terrible. I had to get rid of them. They were just because it's so technical. And then you're trying to teach them the technical side, also make sure they're decent salesmen and
Yeah,
doing stuff ethically. And
yeah.
like, how do you guys train your sales reps?
We train them all the technical stuff. Like there's no way to do it other than to just take your time with people. Like I identified that there's some key technical information that they need to know in order to not botch the systems that they're selling. Because I've had, you know, strong salespeople leave my company before and say, "Hey, I'm going to start my own solar company."
Uh-huh.
And they're strong salespeople, but they don't know how to design the system, right? And then, so like you could just say, "Oh, I'm putting 10 kilowatts of solar," but it's like, well, okay, what's the inverter size? Like, did you realize you need a trench here? Has that been factored into the bid? Like, there's so many technical little tiny details in
Uh-huh.
solar can stretch the cost drastically. One little detail can just, you know what I mean? So my approach has just been to when we bring someone in, obviously they need to be good at sales, they need to be charming, to have a good voice on the phone, but we just drill them. Like once we've seen that, this person probably is going to be able to talk to people, then we start focusing on product knowledge because we want them to be able to, when they sell a system, that system's going to work the way they designed it, and it helps us too because then we save money. We don't have to spend money redesigning systems down the road or covering expenses that weren't thought of before the project was sold. We've seen a huge reduction in that compared to when we first started.
I'm curious, like, how much of your training is sales training versus technical knowledge?
Most of it's technical knowledge.
Really?
Like we
Okay.
kind of hire for sales and then train for technical kind
Yeah.
of thing. And
And
then
is
and then basically the top performers will reveal themselves basically.
so you guys don't have like, scripts that you follow or anything like that, or do you have
Well, we
one that?
do. Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
okay, that's yeah, like so we do definitely drill sales as well. It's
Mhm.
both. It's both. I would say there's like a baseline of technical knowledge that once an agent has hit that, probably more of their focus goes back onto the sales training
Gotcha.
once they're at that, minimum expectation, able to, pass certain tests or, answer certain questions,
Mhm.
figure out like a breaker size or an inverter size, DC to AC ratios, whether you need a trench or not for a job, what kind of inverter to use, if you need to use one inverter or multiple inverters, depending on if there's panels split up between different buildings and such, right? So there's like certain information that they need to know. And then once they know that, it's like back to just focusing on sales, probably.
Yeah, yeah. So you just get them proficient in the technical side. Probably takes a couple months, I'm sure, and then you can
Yeah.
focus back on sales now and dial your skills in.
It takes probably about 6 months for a sales agent to ramp up from joining the company to like being with a full pipeline.
And so, like, I hired two sales guys. Obviously, I know nothing about running sales team. When somebody joins, how many like are you giving them less leads per day, or how do you
Yeah,
like you ramp them up over time?
you
What does
have
that look
to.
like? Yeah.
I mean, we've tried everything. So like when we first started, we would put people on new leads right away and they would just burn leads and it was expensive. And then we did you get no leads and then that didn't work either because they just hate their life and quit. So it's really like we have a sales manager, Spencer. He's great, and he really gives like a very uh like custom approach to each person and what they need. So if this person's progressing along and they could benefit, try them out on a few leads. We throw them a few leads, see how they do, and if they're struggling, then we'll give them one-on-one training. So we kind of give leads to people who are doing well and then restrict them back from people who kind of need more help.
Gotcha. Okay, so it's more of a nurturing. That makes
Yeah,
sense.
at the beginning. And then once an agent's been with us for a while and we know that they're performing, we just keep the leads flowing on autopilot to them.
Nice. And I noticed you guys stick to like two, I guess three systems now, right? You got the Grow Watt, the Solar Edge, and now the Powerwall. Is
Right.
part of that reason to keep it simple for the sales reps, or is it more so just like
Everyone.
you don't want to offer 10 different systems and then you have 10 different monitorings and
Right. Yeah. Exactly. That's the reason why. Like I could offer end phase, I could offer Hoy miles, I could offer everything, right? Like we could just go down the whatever the distributor has and just put it all on our proposal. But I don't do that because every system is a little bit different, right? Like Growatt has a 2-to-1 DC ratio, whereas Solar Edge is 1.5 to 1, and then a microinverter is like 1.3 to 1. So like there's different knowledge there that just makes it so that you have more training involved for a salesperson, which at the end of the day, these products are basically all the same in terms of performance. So it's easier for us to offer a streamlined cookie cutter high quality experience if we have to train our team on less things. Now, that's not to say if a product makes more sense in a certain situation, we will offer it. Um, but
they're rare.
but for example, like if there's shading, then we'll do Solar Edge with the optimizers. And if there's no shading, we can get away with a Grow Watt system, which is a little bit cheaper, doesn't have the optimizers. And then if they want a battery, then we can any of these systems have their own battery, but typically we'd probably lead with a power wall just
Super cost
because
effective.
the power wall has the inverter built into it. And so it's yeah, so like this is basically the triangle that we've created of like when to offer which product based on whether it's the most cost efficient product available. But then sometimes you'll offer a solar edge because it's better for the situation. But then a customer will come and say, "Hey, this company's offering me this system for so much cheaper."
Yeah, so that's kind of what I was curious about because obviously you got a way bigger sales team. I'm just me on the sales, so I can offer like 6 different things, and I'm
Right.
pretty well versed in all of them where I can really offer a custom solution. We can, we can talk Solar, we can talk Enphase, we can do so I can whatever you want to talk about, we can talk about, but it's not a very scalable system. And I was
No.
wondering, like, do you think that the system you guys have costs you sales in some certain situations? But
Yeah,
it
100%.
yeah,
But that's
but
the
it's still
cost of
worth
doing
it.
business.
Yeah.
There's no
Okay.
other way to do it. It's
Mhm.
impossible.
Gotcha.
Like we used to offer off grid too,
Yeah,
and
that sounds brutal.
we don't
I don't
anymore.
wanna do it.
So I have one off grid system design that my team is allowed to offer, and if that one design doesn't fit the customer, then we don't offer off grid because it's too customizable. That
Mhm.
it's too easy to get lost in the details there and mess something up, and then the implementation of those systems is also way more complex too. But I've found that excuse me, sorry, I'm
You're
a
all
little
good,
bit
man.
under the weather. I've found that with that triangle of products, with the Solar Edge, the Grow Watt, and the Tesla, we're able to cover what we need to.
Yeah, like, you hit, like, 95% of all clients' needs, and that's better than trying to complicate your life.
Yeah.
Yeah. You good?
I hit the mute button first this time.
Okay, that's where I'm like, "Oh,
Yeah.
that's, like, auto muting." I'm like, "That's pretty cool."
I don't
Oh, this
think,
is
just to touch back on that, I don't think that we lose customers because we don't offer enough products. It's very rare that someone will come in and they'll be like, I want Enphase or nothing, right? Or I want Solar or nothing. It has happened. And I usually tell the sales team, like, hey, okay, this guy wants Solar or nothing. Okay, we'll give him Solar. We can handle these projects in small capacity because
okay.
I can just look at it personally and be like, hey, well, we'll do this, this, and this, and the guy's good. And I'll do that as like a favor for a sales agent who wants to close a deal.
Gotcha.
But just to streamline things like in general, it's easier if we just stick to that triangle of three products. I would say where we lose the most customers is just, you know, these the companies where it is just one sales guy and one installer. It's impossible to compete on price with them. But the thing is that they won't be able to do the same volume of projects that we can.
Oh,
So
for sure.
So it's
Yeah.
like, I don't know, like it's a trade-off, right? Like if you're a small business, you can offer lower pricing because you have less overhead, but you'll never be able to offer the same volume of service that we can, or you'll never be able to reach the same amount of customers that we can.
Yeah. Well, I'd say
Right.
we qualify, right? Like, right now, I got 3 guys helping me on site, and I'm kinda just managing, but still there, but
Right.
it's essentially 1 crew, right?
Yeah.
And we're for sure doing a ton less volume, and I can offer, I'm sure my pricing is a little bit more competitive because it's less overhead, less marketing,
Yeah.
less commission. Like, I don't take commission from my own company,
Right.
and then yeah, I could maybe the service on site could potentially be better, but I'm not doing 20, 40 installs a month for sure, right?
Right. And so that's the trade-off. And so we'll get quotes from companies like that. And it's like if the customer wants to go with that business and bet on that business, by all means, like a lot of smaller companies, I'm sure do great work. But the reason why a customer would go with a company like ours is because it's like a reliable output. Like you're going to basically get the same thing as everyone else. It's pretty reliable. It's a reliable service. Whereas if you go with a smaller guy, you might get the best solar installer in the world for the cheapest price, but you
Mhm.
also might get the guy that screws you over and your system never gets turned on or he runs away with your money and doesn't know what he's doing.
There's like a variety, man. And I'm on, I think, the other side where I'm like, we offer a really good service at a really good price and we're very professional. But I definitely see the other guys that are, a minivan with a magnet on the side of it, and like,
Yeah.
yeah, you don't know what you're getting, right? Like, you hope he's going to do a good job.
Right.
Yeah, I could definitely see where, at least for me, is if I were a consumer, I'm like, hey, I'm going to pay whatever 10, 15, 20% more, but these guys have been around, they're reputable, they
Yeah.
check their subs, and if they're going to be around in another 5 or 10 years, if ever there is an issue, not just, take the magnet off and never hear
Yeah.
from them again.
And we send the most work to guys like you, right? Like
Yeah.
people who are tried and true and they've proven themselves. And so like as a homeowner, you could take the shot on somebody, which we've taken the shot on people before and they've turned out to be bad. But so a customer will hire us because we've basically done that for them. And so we send the work to the guys who are going to do a good job. Not every case. Obviously, those few clients where we've tried someone out and they did a bad job, those people end up getting shafted, and then we have to send someone else to come fix it.
But you're still on the hook for it and you take care of
Yeah,
it. That's the,
exactly.
the difference, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that all being said, I would say that even though there's smaller companies that are able to offer cheaper pricing, I would say that we're still very competitive with them, even despite that. Like our price isn't that much more than those guys for the much more reliability that we offer, I would say. So that's why I think that we are able to sell so much because the reliability factor is kind of tipping the scales in our
That's a good point.
the
But
like
I
price
like,
to reliability ratio.
yeah, yeah. Or like certainty that it will get installed correctly, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, I know your pricing. It's not like out to lunch. Like we may beat you out by like something like that, 10, 15, 20%, but it's mainly because I'm not paying a bunch of marketing and I'm not
You're doing all the
doing,
project management yourself,
yeah,
right?
exactly. So that's
Yeah.
where the cost savings are. Yeah, that's interesting. What I do want to talk about a little bit is why is there so many freaking bad actors in solar versus like any other freaking trade is not like that. Like electrical, man, it's not like that at all.
I think we touched on it already. The lack of
Certifications.
certification requirement. That being said, if there was a certification requirement, maybe that would have blocked me from getting involved in solar at the beginning.
And so sorry, but I mean like bad actors. I don't mean like people doing shoddy work. I mean people like straight up ripping
Just
people
ripping
off.
people off. Well,
Yeah.
it's the same reason, I would say, because of certifications. I guess you could have a guy with a certification rip people off too. So maybe I'm wrong about that. But there definitely is an overrepresentation of scam artists in solar. Maybe the reason why is because it requires uh, a large upfront deposit in order to get the project off the ground. Because there's this long preparatory phase, getting permits and site inspections and applications and engineering done, where it's easy to justify billing someone a 15% down payment to cover all of that, right?
Yeah.
But so like all of this work we're doing in the background, but the customer doesn't actually see it. So it's easy for a scam artist to kind of blend in because I gave him my 15%. He's working on my project, and then you never hear from him again.
How much of that do you guys battle like in your sales process where people are like, yeah, I don't really want to give you that much money up front because I heard these stories and you're just some guy on the phone.
So it's funny. We used to get it a lot about the deposit that we charge at the very beginning. I would say most of that's gone away just because we do have reviews online. We've been online for a while. Like people can kind of look us up and see reviews and different testimonials. So people are more comfortable putting their money down with us now. But I would say that we do still get some pushback about the remaining balance payment that we charge, where in order to cover the material, shipping all the material out, we send out a bigger invoice. And so I would say people are more hesitant to pay that one before they've actually received the product. Most clients go along with it. I would say it's still a small amount of people who kind of really become a thorn in our side about that. And the reality of it is that most other construction uh like most other types of construction is more labor intensive, so you can get away with billing people at the end. Whereas with solar, it's so much of it goes into the bill of materials that if I just ship you all this stuff and you
Oh
don't
man.
pay for it, I'm in the hole like tens of thousands of dollars. And if you do that at scale, you're just out of business, you
even
know?
even cash flow wise. So like for example, in electrical, on a typical job, 30% of the cost was materials and not all up front,
Right.
right? So to start the job, you really only need maybe 20%, and then that's enough to cover your materials to start, and then you bill at the end
Yeah.
type of thing, and you
Well,
do
my
progress payments.
philosophy is that I need the customer to pay me at least what it costs me to do the job.
Well,
Like in material. Like that's kind of how I manage our cash flow, is that as long as we're not going out of pocket on a customer, then I know that the company is never going to be put in danger. Because the way that I
understood.
look at it is that if we start um going out of pocket for individual projects because we want to sell more, it puts us in a precarious situation where we could potentially run into a cash flow problem that would put other paying customers at risk as well as everyone who works here. So in my mind, it's like a greed versus safety ratio of like it's weird to think about it. It's kind of like a weird dichotomy of charging the customer in full is actually the less greedy option. And the reason why is because I'm only fulfilling product projects that have been paid for. Whereas if I start fulfilling a bunch of projects that haven't been paid for, it's greedy because I'm just trying to get as many sales in the door as possible at all costs. But I'm
Yeah,
putting other people at risk by doing that
that have
because
paid.
because they've paid, but they're suffering because this guy didn't pay, and now my company's going under because this guy that I tried to get greedy and on board, right? That's how I think about it, and that's how I manage the cash flow of the business. And like if I said, we have done like very limited, like zero down or less money down promotions, but on like
Mhm.
a very limited scale, to the point where even if they all defaulted, it wouldn't put anyone at risk. But if we were to just start saying like everybody zero down, we don't need money to run our business,
Yeah.
it would just put everybody at risk
Yeah.
because
Well,
there's such high upfront costs and there's such a long time to getting paid on these projects anyway to begin with.
yeah, that's interesting because I actually had that happen recently where I'm like, I think, for this guy, maybe I could do zero down. It'd be easier for him.
Yeah,
And, but obviously at smaller scale, like, okay, out of 10 projects, it's one.
yeah,
It's not too bad, but
yeah.
yeah, it could put paying customers in a bad spot because you're out that 20.
Yeah, and in your situation, worst case scenario, she doesn't pay you and you're the one installing it, right?
Mhm.
Whereas it's like my company, if I hire you to install it and I don't get paid, that doesn't matter to you.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm
Like
still
you
getting
still,
paid.
yeah, you're still getting paid. So I have to keep all of that in mind with our payment terms. And so I'd say the biggest pushback we do still get is regarding those payment terms. But usually when I explain it to people in this way, like they kind of get it. Like we have to charge what we charge for these reasons. And really, it's actually in your best interest that we do it this way. And, there's no chance we're just going to take your money and run because we have all these other customers. And that's why I put such an emphasis on showing people our past customers and just putting it in their face all the time with our model homes program and our testimonials. And like we literally have customers that people can call who we've installed for them before, just because I know that the biggest barrier to those payment terms is this like
Trust.
hesitancy, the trust thing. So that's why I go so hard on trust because
Well,
we need
yeah,
to.
I love the testimonials you guys are doing, and in all transparency, I'm stealing the idea. We're gonna do some next
You
week.
wouldn't be the first one, but it's
Yeah,
okay. I support everybody.
I know you do. That's why I feel free telling you. But yeah, I think that's amazing. And like the model homes thing, like the your buddy that films those videos, it does a freaking fantastic job. And
Yeah.
then I also noticed you guys have a Facebook community. I like first time we talk about it, tell me a bit about that and how that helps in the sales process and keeping the clients engaged like after their system's installed. Because I know you're still keeping the clients engaged on there.
Yeah, it's an interesting thought that I had because originally, I had thought about it for a while and I was worried. I was like, what if I put a bunch of customers in this group together, and then they all just start raising pitchforks against me. It's a valid concern, I think.
Of course, yeah.
But eventually I just said to myself, you know what? Like, I know that we're committed to all of our customers, and if they have a valid concern, like, we'll cover it anyway. So I just basically convinced myself that there's nothing to worry about in that regard, because we honor all of our warranties, and if something's not installed right, we go back and fix it. So I just figured the worst case scenario wasn't anything to worry about. And so I jumped into it. I made the Facebook group, and it's been great. Like, customers go on there and they post about, like, look at all this power I made today or whatever. And I think it's such a great, well, like, right now it's still small. There's like 300 people in it, but it's
A
growing,
lot.
right? Yeah, it's growing. I mean, it started off small, and I guess it's getting to be bigger now, but like, it's growing faster over time, and it's nice to see people in there kind of have that medium to talk to other solar owners, especially people who have their system from us. I just think there's something nice about being able to offer them that community, because at the end of the day, there's not that many people with solar still. So
Yeah,
giving
no.
them an outlet to kind of find each other online is a nice thing, I think.
Yeah, I think that's awesome because I know, like, at least my clients that are, getting solar, yeah, it is for saving money, but there is a little bit of the like geekiness to it, that they're in it for the tech, and they really like it, right? They like looking at their monitoring, seeing
Right.
how much power they made, and like to have other people to share that with, I think is super awesome. And because, yeah, like you said, there's not that many people that have solar right now. Like, I don't know what it is. It's probably 1 in 1,000 homes in
1 in
Canada.
200.
Is it 1 in 200? That's pretty good.
Yeah, I saw some stats that said, like, Australia is 1 in 3, the USA is 1 in 30, and Canada is 1 in 200.
Cool. So that leads into something I want to talk about. Is like, where do you see the market in Canada going for solar?
I think it's going to go up. Uh,
Yeah.
I think that as long as there's inflation, then there will be a place for solar, because at the end of the day, it's a long-term investment. And in 25 years, I always think back, and I remember my grandpa saying, like, oh, back in my day, a nickel could get you, a bottle of pop and a sandwich from the store. You know what I mean? So if you buy solar with today's dollars, 25 years from now, you're going to be saving like way more money with it.
Uh-huh.
So there's that. And then also, the cost of electricity, I think, will go up even faster than regular inflation because of AI and data centers and electric vehicles, and everyone's switching to electric heating. So just the cost of electricity, I think, well, the demand for it will keep rising.
Well, it's like the generation, and then also like the grid. Like the grid is not, I
That's
don't
true.
know, but I'm
Yeah, it's,
not an
it's coming from
expert,
both
but
ends.
yeah, like I don't think it's ready to handle X the demand
No.
tomorrow.
Yeah, no, and the
So
people paying for it are going to be the ratepayers.
yeah,
They're going to
yeah.
pay for the grid to be upgraded.
Well, it's got to come from somewhere, right? Yeah. Where do you see one last point I want to touch on, and then I'll let you go? But where do you see the future of batteries going? Because in the States, it's obviously a lot more popular, but it's mainly because of their net metering policies, where it just doesn't make sense to send power back to the grid. They're giving you like a 3-to-1 or 4-to-1 split. Now in Ontario, we have the new rebates, which are no net metering, load displacement only because of the aging infrastructure for the grid. They want you to reduce how much power you're pulling from the grid, and that comes with a battery. So do you think that over time every house will have a battery? Will they go down in price? What are you guys thinking?
I don't know if every house will have a battery, but I mean, I can even tell you recently, like, our sales from I've started seeing, I think, like 25% of projects have a battery attached to it, like 1 in 4, which is like a massive increase, because there was a period of time where, like, I don't think we sold our first battery for like 2 years of the company existing, and now it's like 1 in 4 projects has a battery. I think people do see the value. It's also it's hard to communicate the benefit of solar to begin with sometimes, because there's net metering, and then inflation, and then the cost of energy, and all these big concepts you have to kind of get in line with people to get them to agree with you just to go solar in the first place. And then to sell them on the benefit of a battery, it's like even more harder than just the solar alone, because now you have to talk about like time of use, and and like using power in real time versus exporting it and then importing it back and paying tax on that money and versus just having it stored locally. But I think like especially in Ontario because of the ultra low overnight rates and like the time of use system they have, and obviously now the battery rebate too, selling batteries. And probably we've also just gotten better at talking about them as well. Having like trainings with the team, getting people from Solar Edge and Tesla to come talk to our team directly, I think has also helped. But I would say the future of batteries is definitely it's going to keep increasing. I don't know where that will go. I definitely think we're way far behind the USA still.
Yeah.
Obviously, the reason why I'm confident in solar is because you can literally look at the USA and just say we're going to get there. We're like 10, 15 years behind them, but we're going to eventually get there. So, like, I don't mind being in solar right now because there's a lot of room to grow
Yeah. So
between,
one in
but
200 will become
yeah,
one in 30 here.
yeah. So there's going to be a 10x growth in Canada. So, like, from between now and 10 years from now, 2035, this like EV mandate, everything's kind of coming together around that time. These commercial tax credits and stuff are all kind of set to go until that time. So it's going to grow, like obviously.
Yeah. Well, that's why I decided to like kind of rebrand the company. Like, obviously, I was doing electrical contracting before, started getting into like power generation as started doing generators, did one or two solar projects, thought, okay, this is definitely where the future of
Right.
residential is going. And maybe not everybody, but a lot of people are going to have solar, a lot of people are going to have batteries. And the reason I think a lot of people will have batteries is 20 years ago, like the Generac units, like nobody had those.
Yeah.
Now everybody, well, not everybody, but a crap ton of people have
Right.
Generac, and it's like a household name. Everybody knows it. I think it's going to be the same thing with batteries. People aren't really going to have generators anymore. They're going to have their solar and their battery, and that's how they're going to power the home.
I remember when I was a little kid, I feel like I had this thought in my head of like if you had a central air conditioner attached to your house, you were like rich or something, you have an air conditioner. And now everyone has a heat pump, right? Or
Yeah,
and now everyone has a generator. So it's like this type of thing. It's just going to keep getting people like investing in their homes. So,
I agree. I think people like our top client really is like kind of like I said, kind of not geeky, but like really into technology. Like one of our clients, man, we're doing full end phase system with batteries, and then he's going to control that all from his whatever smart home system he has. He's
right.
going to tie that all in. It's all going to control itself, like be one whole ecosystem, really. And he's already got a generator on the premises. It's like you say, he's really investing into his house, and it's going to be like its own smart bubble ecosystem, which is like super cool. I can't wait to see what he does with the whatever software he's running. I'm like, man, you're gonna have to tell
One of
me.
our one of our customers has, I think it's like alarm.com or something. It's some home alarm system that has an app on the phone, and the alarm system has an API connecting it with SolarEdge. And so
Yeah,
we installed him a SolarEdge system, and it connects to his phone through his home alarm system. And
that's cool.
and they also have like their own custom API where you can, I don't know, I'm not like that technically savvy, but
Me neither.
you can code your own thing, right? So there's a lot of for I think you're right. Like solar definitely appeals to the tech nerds among us because if you're
Uh-huh.
gonna pay for power anyway, why not get something cool on your house that you can tinker with, right?
Yeah, agreed. And they can be a bit more reliable if you tie batteries in.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, man. I think that's a great place to end it there. We're getting close to an hour. Thanks a lot for your time. I look forward to seeing you guys grow because I'm inspired by what you're doing with Zolar. I'd love to see it. And like as an entrepreneur, I respect you guys a lot, respect what you're doing a lot. And I look forward to growing with you guys as well and getting some installs done this summer.
Well, thank you. I look forward to seeing you grow too. I like watching out on your Instagram page and seeing
There you
all the
go.
different videos and all the content you're putting out. So I think you're definitely on the right track yourself.
Thank you, Chris. We'll end it there, brother. Thank you.
All right, you too.
Okay, so the battery and solar rebates in Ontario, obviously they're not eligible for net metering. So you want to talk a bit about that, like pros and cons and what a homeowner should look for?
Yeah, so I mean, it's great that they're incentivizing solar and battery. In my opinion, They should have modeled the program after the BC Hydro rebates, where it's basically the same thing. They're giving 5,000 for solar and then up to another 5,000 for battery. But the only difference is that in BC you're allowed to do net metering, and so in my opinion, the rebate in Ontario that's being offered has an Achilles heel, which is that it's great that you're getting up to $10,000 back on your system, which helps, but you're losing, tens of thousands of dollars in savings over the lifetime of your system because you're not allowed to export that energy back to the grid and get a bill credit anymore. So we offer both. We kind of talk through the pros and cons with our clients of like, do you see yourself kind of going down this route where it's like your upfront cost is a little bit lower because you're getting this rebate, but then maybe your lifetime savings aren't going to be as high because you can't send the credits back? Or are you more concerned with the lifetime savings and you don't mind foregoing the rebate? Ideally, the government would, come to their senses and fix this program to offer both, but that's my opinion right now, and that's kind of the word that I've sent down to my sales team on how to approach it.
So I know why they're not allowing net metering with it. And it's like, if you read on the Save on Energy, like they're investing $10.9 billion into the residential grants and then the commercial grants as well for low displacement only. And the reason is all that excess solar during the day has to freaking go somewhere, right? So it's still demand on the grid. They still got to manage it. They still got to bill people for it, but it's still demanding on the grid, on the transformers. It's still using up all the equipment. So what they want
Right.
to do is, instead of them building power plants, upgrading the infrastructure, is like, hey, we're going to incentivize you to need less from us,
Right.
which makes sense, but you just got to make sure to size the battery properly. So if someone's using a ton of power, let's say they're using 50 kilowatt hours a day and their solar produces 20, well, you're going to need at least 30 kilowatt hours of storage
Right.
to charge with the excess and then use that excess to make you last until next morning. Then that could make sense. But in most cases, you need a ton of batteries and it's just not going to make sense.
In my eyes, it is a little bit of a form of passing the buck,
Oh, 100%.
because they're passing the cost on to the homeowner to install the battery infrastructure that they should be installing and dealing with themselves. So this is kind of like putting off a problem into the future that they should probably be dealing with now. Also, I'm not sure what the split is there exactly, but I don't think residential homeowners are the majority power consumers in the province. I think it's probably mostly commercial, which commercial, I guess they're doing a behind the meter rebate for commercial now too, right?
Yeah, but low displacement only, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I think it's foolish because they're effectively de-incentivizing people from going solar at all by
Uh,
doing this, because people always want to wait for the good program, right? I want to wait for, they're always doing rebates. I want to wait for the rebate. And if you give them this rebate that's effectively a poisoned apple, I think that actually can de-incentivize people. Whereas I would rather see them even do like a reduced net metering, like if you do this program, you get 70 cents on the dollar for your credits or something versus just nothing at all, right? And that way it can be a win for both parties. You're giving them a better deal, so they're adding the battery. Because they're adding the battery anyway with this rebate. Why not like if you incentivize them more, they're going to install more batteries. So I don't really see the argument from that side too well. Because if you make the rebate contingent on getting the battery storage, which it is, you're not actually pressuring the grid too much more, I would say. Or whatever pressure that homeowner is adding to the grid is also being partially offset. I don't know, it just doesn't seem like. And then coupled with the fact that I don't think the homeowners are the majority energy consumer to begin with, it doesn't
yeah.
seem like it's the right target for like,
You're not fixing the problem.
yeah,
Yeah, because I could see it's like, okay, if it's a short term solution while you build out the power plants, because I know they're building out a ton of renewables anyways, like solar, wind, and then I'm sure they're doing other power plants as well. and upgrading the infrastructure. If it's like short-term solution, because it takes 10, 15 years to build the power plants, okay, makes sense. But I think, like you say, homeowners are probably not the biggest power consumers anyway, so that's not really the problem. The problem is the, you know, commercial buildings, industrial buildings that are using
Right. And
a
if
crap
you
ton more.
and if you do incentivize them to build the batteries, like eventually this grid situation has to be tackled at some point.
Mhm.
So it's a little short-sighted because once this grid problem is tackled, you'll want those batteries there, right? But by de-incentivizing people because you're making the deal not as good as it should be, those batteries are not going to be installed. And so whenever you do eventually deal with this grid problem anyway, you're just going to end up with a lot less people with solar than you could have had. So I think that lots of solar and battery incentivization is good. I think solar itself maybe doesn't even necessarily need rebates because it's already a profitable investment on its own. But
Mhm.
in incentivizing just the battery, I think is actually really smart because the grid does stand to gain from that. You know, if every single house had a battery on it, the like collective society has a lot to benefit from that because they have these virtual power plant programs where people can literally opt in their batteries to be used by the utility to manage the whole grid, right?
I don't know if I know I've heard of those in the States. I don't know if any of those programs are live, or like eventually the way it's going to go is you're going to plug in your EV to your car. That's going to work as a big battery, or plug in your EV to your house. Sorry, and that's going to work as a battery for your house. And then at the same time, you could do like the vehicle to grid if we're missing power from the power plants, and then we won't have to fire up like peaker plants, like the natural gas plants, where that's why we have the peak rates, right? Because those power plants are more expensive to fire up. Then we can just levelize the grid with solar power that goes to your car, and then the car goes to the grid. And yeah,
Yeah, they don't do it now, but there's no reason why they couldn't in the future, right? And you need to have the battery capacity there in order to make those programs. So the way I see it is that the more batteries there are installed, the better. It's just better for everybody. It's better for the grid. So to like they're like giving this incentive, but then kind of like making it not as good as it should be. They're just reducing the number of batteries they're going to have, which is going to benefit not only the homeowner, but it's going to benefit the grid owner too eventually.
uh-huh.
So I think just fully incentivizing solar does way more good than harm in this like analysis they've done of like, well, we need to focus on zero export because we're gonna have to upgrade the grid. Like, I think that that's just like nonsense, and they should just fully incentivize solar and battery, and then if you have to upgrade your grid, like you're gonna have to do that eventually anyway. So once that gets done, you'll have been thankful for having incentivized the battery storage.
Yeah, that makes sense. Cool, man. I think that's good.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think so, yeah.
Okay, sick.